Mr. Peterson grabbed her arm and knocked it down, and the gun fired 2 more times. In essence, Mr. Peterson never shot anyone.
The case everyone thought was buried under a 10-year sentence just started breathing again. And not because of rumors, but because of records. When Tory Lanez was convicted in December 2022 and sentenced in August 2023 for shooting Megan Thee Stallion in July 2020, the public narrative hardened overnight. 3 felony convictions. Assault with a semi-automatic firearm. The gavel dropped and the system declared victory. But appeals are where convictions go to be dissected. And now more than 200 pages of medical documentation from Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, surfaced during Megan's 2025 civil defamation lawsuit, are being framed by his legal team as evidence that the full story may not have been litigated in open court. His attorney petitioned the California Supreme Court citing Brady v. Maryland, arguing potentially favorable material wasn't fully available to the defense before trial. Prosecutors countered swiftly, stating the records were not exculpatory and that forensic testing had already linked the recovered firearm to the casings and fragments. Appellate courts have so far agreed with the state. Cold fact: the conviction stands. But psychologically, when new paperwork emerges years later, it destabilizes certainty. This resonates because people are less reactive to guilt or innocence than they are to perceived unfairness. If the process looks incomplete, the verdict feels fragile, even when courts say otherwise. That tension is where this story now lives. And that's what makes it dangerous for both sides.
Not long ago, Unite the People was approached by a gentleman named Bradley James.
Then comes Bradley James. Not a headline witness from trial, not a forensic analyst, but a man who says he was in Kelsey Harris's orbit during the legal storm. He claims he heard conversations. He claims proximity. And in high-profile cases, proximity becomes currency. The streets don't evaluate sworn testimony the way appellate judges do. They evaluate plausibility and motive. James stepping forward years later didn't change the legal record overnight, but it changed the temperature online. Because when someone from the inner circle speaks, even informally, people lean in. Now, analytically speaking, his statement is not evidence. It hasn't been cross-examined. It hasn't been admitted. But culturally, it reopened doubt. And doubt spreads faster than transcripts.
Mr. James informed us he was not under a non-disclosure agreement or a confidentiality agreement.
James framed his decision as conscience-driven, saying he couldn't sit back while a man rotted for something he didn't do. That framing matters. It casts him as whistleblower, not bystander. And whistleblowers tap into something primal. The idea that truth eventually forces its way out. Critics will argue timing undermines credibility. Why wait years? That's a fair question. But emotionally, audiences often interpret delayed revelations as fear finally breaking. Whether that interpretation is justified is another matter. The court deals in admissibility. The public deals in narrative gravity.
James informed Unite the People that he was a witness to the conversation Miss Harris had, where she stated,
what he alleged about Kelsey Harris was explosive not because it introduced a new theory, but because it revived an old suspicion that never fully died. From the beginning, parts of the audience questioned whether the narrative presented at trial captured every layer of that night. So when James suggested Kelsey admitted to firing the weapon, it didn't feel random. It felt like confirmation bias for those already skeptical. That's how narratives flip. Not with new evidence alone, but with alignment to existing doubt.
She had the gun. She fired it 3 times. Mr. Peterson grabbed her arm and knocked it down, and the gun fired 2 more times.
According to James, Tory never fired the gun. That Kelsey discharged it, and that Tory's involvement was limited to attempting to push her arm down, causing additional shots. If true, that would fundamentally reframe intent and responsibility. But here's the surgical truth. Claims require corroboration. At trial, gunshot residue testing showed 12 particles on Tory's hand, above the 3-particle threshold commonly cited for recent discharge, while Megan and Kelsey tested negative. That forensic detail was central to the prosecution's case. Supporters dispute interpretation. Courts upheld admissibility. So now the question isn't what sounds plausible, it's what survives evidentiary standards.
This statement aligns with the statement of the only non-party witness to the case, Mr. Sean Kelly.
James' account also echoed parts of bystander Sean Kelly's testimony, where he described chaos, 2 women fighting, men intervening, and shots emerging from the passenger side. Alignment like that fuels credibility in the public mind. But appellate rulings emphasize that trajectory analysis and biomechanical mapping placed the muzzle within feet of Megan from the front passenger position, where Tory was seated. Coincidence or confirmation depends on perspective. And perspective is the silent driver of this entire saga.
For example, there were 3 potential suspects in the car that night, and yet the only DNA sample was taken of Mr.
Here's where the temperature of this case really started to rise again. The forensic questions that never fully died. For years, critics have asked why Tory Lanez appeared to be the primary focus of early DNA swabbing when multiple individuals were inside that SUV. That question resonates because in high-profile cases, people instinctively look for balance in procedure. If 3 or 4 people are present, the public expects equal scrutiny. Now, the official trial record shows that the firearm recovered, a Taurus PT-738, underwent DNA testing that produced a mixed profile. Tory could not be excluded. Megan and Kelsey were not identified on the weapon. That ambiguity became gasoline online. Supporters framed it as selective investigation. Prosecutors framed it as standard forensic complexity when multiple handlers are involved. And here's the cold analytical truth. Mixed DNA results often sit in gray zones. They rarely scream innocence or guilt. They whisper probability. The appellate court reviewed those arguments and concluded the evidence was legally sufficient. But psychologically, gray areas create narrative oxygen. This resonates because people don't just want a conviction, they want certainty. And when certainty feels statistical instead of absolute, doubt becomes louder than data.
If you look at the steps that it took, remember Kelsey asked for immunity. That should have said something.
Kelsey Harris pleading the fifth 52 times in 90 minutes during trial remains one of the most psychologically disruptive moments in the case. Because when a key witness refuses to answer direct questions, even under legal counsel, it triggers suspicion in the public imagination. Critics say she was protecting herself from perjury exposure. That's legally rational. But emotionally, silence looks like concealment. And that visual alone reshaped how millions interpreted her earlier recorded statement.
She asked for that.
Not only did she ask for immunity, then got on the stand and said, I don't remember anything.
Then 2025 added another layer to Kelsey Harris's evolving role. On July 8th, she filed a sworn declaration in Megan's civil harassment case that partially reaffirmed her original 2020 statement pointing to Tory as the shooter. But the tone was different, less detailed, more restrained. She cited fear, trauma, and retaliation as reasons for her silence at trial. Now step back and look at that timeline. 2020, direct accusation. 2022, 52 invocations of the Fifth Amendment. 2025, renewed but softened confirmation. Legally, the appellate court dismissed claims of witness tampering and called the trial dynamic strategic, not coercive. But socially, people don't process shifts through legal language. They process them through instinct. When a witness changes posture over time, the public senses pressure, even when none is proven. Critics argue trauma explains inconsistency. Supporters argue inconsistency signals hidden leverage. Both interpretations feed polarization. According to behavioral psychology research on testimony credibility, consistency over time is one of the strongest predictors of perceived reliability. That's why her shifts mattered so much. Not because they overturned evidence, but because they destabilized perception.
He was stabbed 14 times, including 7 wounds to his back, 4 to his torso, 2 to the back of his...
Then came the prison stabbing in May 2025. 14 wounds in under 30 seconds inside a California facility. That moment jolted the entire narrative back into headlines. Because prison is punishment, but near-fatal violence inside prison feels like collapse of control. It transformed Tory from solely a convicted defendant into a vulnerable inmate in the public eye.
And one to the left side of his face. Both of his lungs collapsed, and he was placed on a breathing apparatus.
Medical professionals online debated the reported severity, questioning whether both lungs could collapse and recovery happen that quickly. Speculation surged, but confirmed hospital records documented surgery, plasma transfusions, and extended recovery. In moments like this, facts and exaggerations blur. And in that blur, sympathy grows.
Oh, they're not questioning it.
They said it's bull.
That can't happen.
Some skeptics speculated the severity was amplified to build leverage for appeals or improved housing conditions. That theory circulates online but remains unproven. Cold analysis. Correctional reports classified it as inmate-on-inmate assault, and he was transferred to enhanced monitoring afterward. Emotion sees conspiracy. Documentation shows bureaucratic response.
There might be an opportunity there to have some good things happen for you if it sounds more dramatic than it.
The prison stabbing in May 2025 didn't just injure Tory physically. It reshaped the emotional geometry of the case. 14 stab wounds, surgery, partially collapsed lung, a 9-day hospitalization. These aren't internet rumors. Those medical interventions were documented. But here's the deeper tension. Prior transfer assessments had reportedly flagged heightened vulnerability due to his celebrity status and media visibility. Emails referenced in subsequent litigation suggested internal warnings about possible threats. Yet he was placed in general population. That detail shifted the narrative from convicted celebrity to inmate placed in avoidable danger. Critics argue resource constraints and overcrowding complicate classification decisions inside corrections. That's structurally true. But emotionally, when someone publicly controversial is attacked after documented risk flags, it looks like systemic indifference. And that perception matters. Because once the public starts believing institutions ignore their own warnings, trust erodes beyond a single case. This wasn't just violence, it became symbolic.
I take issue is if you're asking for Tory to be held accountable, and for those people that meant prison, you can't then be cheering that he gets stabbed.
Public reaction split sharply. Some expressed empathy regardless of guilt. Others argued consequences are consequences. But many agreed on one thing. Celebrating violence crosses a moral line. That moment exposed something deeper. Justice debates are volatile, but cruelty fatigue is real.
He went to prison. What else do you want him to, like, he got 10 years. That should be the end of it.
After the stabbing, Tory's team folded the incident into a broader clemency narrative. Rehabilitation, education milestones, music recorded from behind bars, and over 40,000 petition signatures physically delivered to state authorities. Supporters framed it as evidence of growth and disproportionate punishment. But here's the analytical counterweight. According to California commutation data over the past decade, firearm-related sentence reductions without appellate reversal are statistically rare. Clemency is discretionary and political, yes, but it's also precedent-driven. Governors historically avoid overturning jury decisions unless legal findings unravel first. So while the petition surge generated momentum online, structurally the odds remain steep. This is where emotion and probability collide. Sympathy increases. Policy doesn't necessarily move. And that gap between public pressure and institutional inertia becomes its own frustration engine.
Lanez declined to testify during his 2022 trial.
Do you regret not taking the stand?
I think if I would have taken the stand, the verdict would have definitely been very.
His December 2025 NBC interview reignited another debate. Why didn't he testify? He expressed regret for remaining silent. Analysts suggested he may have been protecting someone else. That theory energizes supporters. But juries often interpret silence strategically, not heroically. And in criminal defense, risk calculations sometimes backfire publicly.
I always felt Tory was kind of protecting a little bit Kelsey.
He described the incident as a struggle over a firearm rather than a targeted shooting. That distinction is critical legally. Intent versus chaos. But appellate courts already reviewed sufficiency of evidence and upheld the jury's finding. Reframing intent now faces a steep legal climb.
Felt like it always went down that they were fighting for a gun.
When asked what he would say to Megan, he chose restraint, saying he preferred a private conversation and held no hatred. Some interpreted that as maturity. Others saw inconsistency with full innocence. In high-profile cases, tone becomes evidence in the court of public perception.
Currently, you're convicted of shooting her. You answering a question about if you forgive her.
The NBC interview introduced another psychological wrinkle. When Tory suggested he held no hatred toward Megan and would prefer to speak privately, reactions split instantly. Some saw maturity, others saw contradiction. Because in the public mind, innocence and forgiveness rarely coexist cleanly. Analysts pointed out that presenting himself as extending grace could clash with his claim of complete non-involvement. Critics will argue that an innocent person demands vindication, not reconciliation. That's a powerful counterpoint. But human behavior isn't always legally optimized. People process trauma, strategy, and public image simultaneously. In appellate review, interviews can influence perception but rarely override trial evidence. Still, optics matter. And in a case already divided by narrative warfare, tone becomes another battleground.
They're going to say, this is bugging. What do you mean if you forgive her when we convicted you of shooting her?
The clemency push escalated when elected officials sent a formal recommendation letter urging review, citing inconsistencies and alleged evidentiary gaps. Megan's legal team responded with formal opposition, emphasizing the emotional toll and the jury's verdict. The governor's office acknowledged receipt but noted a backlog of hundreds of pending applications. Here's the structural reality. Executive clemency functions within political calculus. High-profile reversals carry reputational consequences. According to past patterns, governors are more likely to act when appellate courts identify legal error first. Without that trigger, clemency becomes politically radioactive, especially in cases involving firearm violence and celebrity victims. So while the campaign builds narrative heat, the institutional machinery moves slowly, cautiously, and often conservatively.
Gavin Newsom is not going to pardon Tory Lanez. Why?
Speculation about political optics, including prior public alignment with Megan's music, fueled arguments that clemency would be politically radioactive. Whether fair or not, public figures weigh optics heavily in high-visibility decisions.
If he pardoned Tory, it would be a political night.
Federal pardon talk surfaced online, but this is a state conviction. Presidential authority doesn't reach here. That avenue closes instantly under constitutional structure.
Can't do nothing to him, can he?
This is a state case.
This is state.
Conspiracy theories involving Roc Nation and Jay-Z exploded across social platforms, alleging manipulation from defense sabotage to jury interference. None of those claims have survived evidentiary scrutiny in court. But conspiracy thrives where trust erodes.
I'm pretty sure Jay-Z had nothing to do with that, my guy. Like, Jay-Z was at home when Megan got shot in the foot. Like,
Megan is under Rock.
Strip away conspiracy talk, and you're left with the forensic backbone that appellate courts repeatedly referenced. Ballistics analysis matched discharged casings to the recovered Taurus PT-738 firearm. Gunshot residue testing detected antimony and lead particles on Tory's right hand above commonly cited discharge thresholds. Megan and Kelsey tested negative. DNA results were partial, not definitive, not exclusionary. Trajectory modeling placed muzzle distance within feet of Megan's injuries. Chain of custody logs documented over 1,000 entries across multiple custodians over 5 years. Defense auditors flagged minor procedural gaps but no confirmed breaches. The appellate court devoted extensive analysis to these challenges and upheld admissibility. That's the cold architecture of the conviction. Not rumor, not commentary, documented evidentiary rulings. whether one believes the interpretation is separate from whether courts found it legally sufficient.
And the inconclusive thing that he talks about, which is when there were these reports that were released that Tory Lanez DNA was not found on the gun that shot Megan Thee Stallion.
Yes, the DNA sat in a gray zone. Partial inclusion probability without definitive identification. That ambiguity fuels debate. But ambiguity alone does not overturn verdicts. Courts require material impact, not interpretive discomfort.
Inconclusive means that there wasn't enough evidence to say his
So now the case sits in a strange space. Legally stable, culturally volatile. The conviction remains intact. Appeals are pending. Public opinion is fractured. Megan continues charting commercially. Tory continues recording from incarceration. What began as a late-night argument in July 2020 has evolved into a referendum on credibility, institutional trust, celebrity influence, and the psychology of doubt in the digital age. This resonates because people aren't just debating guilt anymore. They're debating whether the system gets high-profile cases right under pressure. If this continues, the next phase won't be about one artist versus another. It will be about whether the public believes appellate review represents correction or confirmation. And once that question takes root, it doesn't stay confined to one case. It spreads. And that's where this story becomes bigger than everyone involved.